Hey, welcome. So today we're diving into Agentic AI and why I think it will completely transform work productivity today. I'll try to give you a better understanding of what Agentic AI is. I'll showcase a demo and then really try to land on why you should be investing your time or resources into this area. So first though, I do want to make sure kind of we talk about agents versus Agentic AI. So an agent you can kind of think of as a typical chatbot. So limited skills, primarily reactive. We're going to have a predefined data that's kind of coming in that's pretty narrow on what data it has access to and such. And then it's going to be really focused on performing a certain set of tasks. So you can kind of think of this as scheduling a flight, right? So booking a flight is a great example of where you can kind of talk to the chatbot, see what flights are there for a given day, and then be within the destination, and you're kind of forcing in a lot of the information that's there. It's typically very narrow on the path, so you can kind of think tied to workflows, tied to some automation. Agentic AI is a significant level up from agents. So this is where we're now allowing for the planning, iteration, kind of a conversation, very similar to what you're doing with ChatGPT, all kind of within this agentic AI or agent. That's much smarter. So most of it's goal driven or action driven on trying to get a certain outcome. I'll demo this a little bit, and we can kind of see how it iterates and how it has multiple prompts that are kind of going through to allow it to achieve said task. It also has memory, which I think is really important. So learning about the individuals on their preferred or preferences, so that this way it's going to continue to kind of provide the result that you're looking for. And then the other great thing about this is it can often be proactive. So this is one where an event happens inside an organization. You can have kind of a workflow trigger and then fire off to actually make sure to notify kind of that agentic AI that can then actually understand how to process information. So again, you can kind of think of this as booking a flight as the agent versus being a full-on travel agent that can help you with your hotels and it can help you with your flights or train travel. And if there's an issue, you miss the train, it's going to see it right away, and then it's going to be able to say, hey, here's some alternative ways. I've got an Uber for you, down, that's on your way. Hey, no doubt we'll still get you where you need to be, kind of scenario. So we're not quite there, within that full-on agentic, but it kind of gives you the concept of where that's going to go in. So when we talk about agentic AI, this is kind of more of the architecture that you're typically seeing. So again, I'm glossing over a couple things, but for the most part, you're going to have data that you're bringing. So this can be files, this can be kind of some sort of RAG, approach, typically a vector database. But there are kind of knowledge graphs and other approaches there. You have the memory aspect, again, that kind of gets into the individual, right? That's around it, as well as some templates. So templates are really important to make sure that the output is going to align, especially for an organization. On the tools side, this is where it's connecting to your applications. So again, when we kind of think of the travel agent scenario, or booking a single flight, we can actually control through MCP or model context protocols. We can control how many skills, what kind of access to information to some of our systems this has. It gives us a lot of flexibility for how we can actually, limit yet at the same securely how we want it to interact with our environments and such. But you can kind of think of the MCP side as making sure I'm giving my systems access, or the agents, access to some of my systems in a controlled manner. On the right, we have kind of the planning. This is very important for how it's going to understand of breaking down the goals, making sure it kind of has all the tools that it needs in order to achieve said tasks and such, and being able to kind of build those out. You also have multiple personas. This is really important to make sure, if we think about different roles within the company, it's going to be a similar, kind of approach. One aspect would be, again, going to the travel scenario. We're planning out a vacation. we might actually plan out and say, okay, well, based on who's going, husband, wife, kids, will the kids like it? It would kind of get the feedback of, yes, the kids are going to like some of the suggestions and such. And then, of course, on the chat side, that's really just the chat interface of how we're interacting. So why this matters. Okay, so before I jump into the demo, I just really want to hit home with the fact that this is much bigger than code, right? So the demo I'm showing is going to be more of the vibe code kind of phrase. And again, vibe coding is kind of an interesting term. Some people hate it, but the reality is, it's one of these of where it is changing the way that we're programming, right? So we can kind of see already Microsoft, Google, they're already talking about 40-50+% of their code is being generated by LLMs right now, or ChatGPT type interfaces, right? So or type experiences and such. So this is definitely moving. Now, large part of what it's doing is it's actually having, within, Visual Studio and VSCode and things of that nature. So I'm going to show VSCode, and I'm going to actually show a tool called Klein as we kind of walk through with what's there. But again, the main thing is that it's more than just, coding. This is going to be across all of our, we can kind of think of this in more of our applications, more of our business processes, of how we can kind of, help bring automation to a much higher level than what we're doing today. So why don't we jump in? And what I'm going to show is basically I found a picture off of Dribble, which is a great site. A lot of inspiration for some of the designs and such that I pull from, but found one from this Phenomenon product, and the clean interface, very much like it. And then this is the prompt that I have. So I just say, analyze this image thoroughly and generate code. Now again, I picked vanilla JavaScript, pretty basic type stuff, but you can do React, you could do really anything that you kind of want around there. And then I've just kind of walked through and just say, hey, focus on, accuracy, things of that nature. It's not perfect. I will definitely tell you ahead of time. It's not going to be perfect. But what's nice about it is that we can actually kind of come through. I'll run this now. But what will happen is we can actually see the code that it generates is a significant step forward for me kind of generating, for any type of development that might occur. So I think that's what's really crucial for what we're doing here, which is we're actually going to go through and say, as you're building this, or as you're using, some of this tooling and such, it's important to actually make sure that you're still learning the key things of development. You're also making sure that you're not just relying only on the vibe coding, kind of experience, but you can absolutely see it is a major productivity boost. So this is kind of going through, it's creating the index HTML right now. And we'll kind of walk through on this left-hand side too. Again, kind of talking through, it's going to have a plan for everything that's there. So looking at the image, this is what's kind of loaded in. It's going to continue to operate. Now I am hooked up to an Azure OpenAI instance. And what's nice about this is you kind of bring your own model, right? So that's another kind of key thing that really looking at within anything that you're kind of building out is avoid vendor lock-in, right? But Azure OpenAI seems to be pretty strong all the way through. Okay, so now what we'll do is I'll pull this up on this screen here. Okay, so here we go. Now you'll notice it's definitely not pixel perfect by any means, right? And I would say for sure that's kind of one of the things that it's important to know. But what I do like about it is it got a lot of the pieces for me already pretty well built out. So I'll kind of pull this up again, and then I'll try to slide this over here so we can kind of see side by side. So pretty solid in terms of this overall kind of look here. It does not have the proper height. It doesn't have this kind of color gradient. So again, it's not perfect, but you can certainly see this is a strong step in the right direction from a time saving perspective. So, again, where we're kind of going, it's beyond just coding, right? So we're already kind of hearing, like mentioned, Microsoft, Google, they're getting 40-50% of their code is written, with tools like Klein. But it's one of these of where the productivity that's happening is going to continue to kind of happen around organizations and such. So it does help kind of turn goals into concrete steps. It's going to really automate, how it kind of brings in data information. We can kind of think about this as an internal, ticket resolution, for example, where if you're asking questions about a knowledge, some documentation that you have in your environment or within your organization, kind of giving you some of the goals that kind of assist with this. Or if you're doing projects and you want to have things automatically break down, tasks into subtasks and things of that nature, those kind of pieces where it can kind of help with the productivity of being able to, whether it's planning, whether it's, automation kind of around that. There's just so many ways that it can really help. And then, of course, I think a key thing is workflow has become significantly smarter, really kind of across the company. So, anyhow, I hope this was enough of a sharing was something that kind of exciting for what's out there within some of the Agentic AI. I think it's definitely something that you should, I encourage you to kind of play around with, leverage Klein, leverage some of these, whether it's GitHub Copilot, Cursor, or any of these. It's really worth kind of spending some time around. I like Klein just because I can bring my own model and I can play around that way. But it's whichever one is kind of ideal for you. So special shout out to my son for encouraging me to kind of do this. I've been thinking about creating some YouTube videos. Hopefully you liked it. If you would, this is my first one, so just if you would, share, comment, and let me know how I can make it better. All right. I appreciate it very much. Have a good one.